Hi there, just waiting for the followers to come for hanging with Heideas outside today. Hello, hello. First up. So today we are doing hanging with Heideas from the outside. This is the Hudson River. Um, the Hudson River. We are in the lower Hudson Valley. If you went down the Hudson River a little bit, you would be in New York City. So right across from us is Westchester County. This is Rockland County, Piermont, New York. And in the background, I believe you can see the Tappan Zee Bridge. But it is a beautiful day today, and I am going to be joined by a guy who comes, and yes, the weather is beautiful today, thank you. And we are going to be joined by a guy who comes from a land where there is a lot of big sky, although it is not Montana, big sky country, from Colorado. Yay! And here he is. Here he is. We're going to invite my bro, my bud, Dr. Cohen. We're waiting for Dr. Cohen. Here he is.
Good morning, Heidi. How's it going?
Good. I said in honor of Colorado, I am showing sky here. Even though you are not big sky, you do have big sky there. We know.
We do have big sky. I took my little one up to the mountains the other day for some hiking, and it was spectacular just to see the snow-capped mountains, the green spring grass.
Amazing. It is amazing. Now, meanwhile, I notice you're wearing a hat. For the record, my dear, I cut my own hair. And I have long hair. You have people there in your home who could potentially cut your hair.
You are absolutely right. My wife and my oldest actually,
Yes.
they YouTubed the other day how to give a haircut because there's still about a 3-hour wait for a haircut. But
Yeah.
this
I
is
mean,
this is my hair at this point, and the ponytail is
it
definitely
is.
something.
It looks kind of like a mullet.
Well,
Remember mullets?
as a hockey player, mullets are actually good.
Oh, okay. He's cool. He's got a mullet. Well, I cut mine myself. I got the great scissors. If they need a scissor, tell them to reach out to me. I'll tell them what I bought. Japanese steel.
Yours looks excellent. I'm not sure that I'm ready to trust my wife, or I actually have one of my nurses used to cut hair, and
Oh,
she hasn't cut hair, and probably she's been with me about 9 years. She's amazing, Christina, and she actually brought her scissors to work the other day, and she was a little hesitant. She said, I haven't cut hair in a long time, and she said, I always get a little bit worried about curly hair because I have a tendency to make it a little too short. And I said, you know
well,
what?
but if you cut it dry, because my hair is very curly, this is because I used a Dyson flat iron, my newest fave thing. But my hair is curly, so I cut it dry. And you know what? The worst is you're wearing, who's seeing you? Let's be real right now.
I'm right. I totally agree with you. You know what? Honestly, I'm ready for a haircut. It'll probably happen today or tomorrow. And if Great Clips continues to have a 3-hour line, I'm going to go to mediocre or satisfactory clips or clips.
See, we don't have hair salon. I'm not going to a hair salon. The only person I'd let cut my hair is hi Goldie,
Good morning.
hi there,
I'm
hi
so glad to see
there.
your pretty face.
And one of the reasons I love Joel, for those who don't know him, is that he always says he married up,
Oh, you're the best one.
Not just up, like completely way up.
like completely out of his league.
Like
So,
I'm C material and she's like A+ material.
Stop. All right, guys, I'll
well,
let you out here. I'll let you
we'll
out it.
have our
I
Instagram,
have
but
some
thank
more.
you. Now you can see the woman behind
Hmm.
the man who reaches to the woman.
Yeah, I
There
think his
she is.
hair is,
Yeah, the hair we were
Yeah.
talking, it will get done. It will get done. So now we were just talking about the slopes and the trails and stuff, which is really nice. And I've been getting to see your whole family do stuff together, which, I mean, I'm assuming that's been, that's the one side benefit of all of this is you've had a lot of family time.
Heidela, you're like a big sister to me. And you and Marguerite and Vivian and our whole text crew, that has been something that we've done for a long time. And, that daily sort of update and checking in with one another has been really special just to make sure that our friends are doing okay through this. And, similarly, when our patients reach out to us and say,
Yeah.
Joel, I've been a patient for 12 years and let me know as soon as you're open, or I'm going to order from your online store to keep you guys going, or I'm going to tell my friends to come. and see you right when you open. That has been really special. And while we've been at home, I think that there's been other things that have happened, and I think, a newer relationship with each of my kids, and that type of you know events that we've been able to do, or watching a show together, is something that I think I'll always remember. I've never had anything that comes close to any social media fame. In fact, I should have listened to you 4 years ago when you said, start doing Instagram and these other things. But I the other night I pierced my 7-year-old daughter's American Girl's ears,
Oh,
and,
her American
and
Girl's ears.
and I pierce ears, and I do earlobe
Yeah.
repairs at work all the time, like you do. And earlobe repairs are really, an interesting, challenging, intricate little surgery. And then I came home after a long night, and I had my materials, and then I posted it, and I've never had anything, like, a few hundred views, and all of a sudden, like 2,000 views
It's
later. It's
amazing
cool. Yeah.
because I have to tell you, as a kid, I pierced my ears with my dolls, but in those days I had to stick a needle all the way through. Those little with the ball. But that's amazing. And what's funny is I love that you're saying that I'm the one who told you when I'm the one who didn't have, I think, was it 4 years ago when I finally got a website, 2017. And because a zillion years before I had been lecturing in Brazil on the same panel with Grant Stevens, who is so ahead of the curve. And they were like, okay, and what do you do? And what do you do? And then they got to you and they're like, and then what about you? And I'm like, I don't have a website. I don't have social media. Because, I think also what other people may not know is, like me, you are not a first generation derm. Please explain. Tell
So,
the people.
I am actually a third generation
Right.
dermatologist, and my grandfather graduated University of Toronto Medical School in 1923.
Wow.
And he went into family practice initially because there were quotas about, from what I
Yeah.
understand, who could do what. And then while he was a family practice doctor, he trained at Wayne State University. So he was practicing in Windsor, Ontario, and went across the border and
Wow.
trained with Herman Pincus
Yeah.
at Wayne State, and became a dermatologist. So I still have his diploma that says
Oh.
dermatology and syphilology.
Yeah. Yeah. Venereology and syphilology. Right.
And then my dad was a dermatologist. My dad's been gone about 10 and a half years. But my dad similarly, grew up in Canada. My dad trained at University of Ottawa, and my dad was a year ahead of Jeff Dover's dad at University of Ottawa
Really?
in medical school. So Jeff and I have spoken about that in the past,
Yeah.
and Jeff's father unfortunately just passed away a few months ago. And everybody assumed that, I was going to be a dermatologist. And I said, no, I'm an independent
Same.
thinker.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my own thing. And I really had it narrowed down to urology, and I was all set to do urology. In fact, I did a couple rotations at great places like Cleveland Clinic and NYU, and I was all set to, like, put down my match at Cleveland Clinic and do all that. And then I had this change of heart, and there are a lot of similarities between derm and other procedural like urology. So you have across the spectrum of ages, you have men and women, you have pediatric issues, you have oncology and endocrinology and infectious disease, and they're mostly procedure based. And then ultimately I decided to do derm, and I'm incredibly happy. And then I meet people like you, and I've had the good fortune of spending some time with your dad in New York, and and seeing who started Waldorf dermatology as well. And
But
I've been
what's funny is that you say you also fought it. It's funny, I always said if my dad was a urologist or if my dad was a cardiologist, no one would have said, oh, of course, I was going to be a dermatologist. But I look back, my high school yearbook said, see you when you're a dermatologist, because everyone saw my dad. I mean, fourth grade, our teacher, who it turned out was having a nervous breakdown, took us to the nature trail to collect leaves. And I said, Mrs. Silver, leaves of 3, let them be. And she, no, no, no. So everyone in their leaf books put poison ivy except me. And they all saw my dad. They all needed some relative amount of either injectable, oral, or topical steroid. And of course, the evidence was there on parent teacher night. So dad almost blew up because she gave everybody poison ivy. But people assumed. And I always said the one thing I was not going to do was be a dermatologist. I was not going to do it. And then there's something, people think we go into fields because of money or this or that or fame. But no, it's like my mother was a lawyer, my late mom, and an artist. Grandma was an artist. Dad's a derm. I'm visual. I'm visual and I'm procedural. I work with my hands. Like you said, there are different things. Now, urology, I will say, was not something I liked because we had one day of it. I was very claustrophobic. Everything was this. This made me claustrophobic through the tubes. But again, I get it. Like for me, maybe other things, but GI. But I didn't even really, once I knew derm, it was almost like, oh my God, how am I going to tell dad? I can't believe this. Mom, you have to tell him. But clearly it's our personalities and our skill sets fit. And there's a reason there are a lot of families in derm. We see people are happy with it. Now, did your dad do, was your dad mostly, did he do a lot of general surgery or both?
So my dad practiced in metropolitan Detroit, and he actually, his offices were probably about 45 minutes to an hour away from where we lived. So,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
I didn't have that many of my friends that actually went to go see my dad,
Right.
but it really lends itself, dermatology, to the, oh, by the way, you know, so
Yes.
wherever we were, you know, if he drops you off at school, somebody would say something, he'd roll down the window. And I literally remember the 70s where
And you'd
like
be like,
you're rolling down the window. And, you
wait,
know,
Joel, I have to tell you, I always joke that if I didn't know my dad was a derm, I'd think he was a cocaine dealer for all the time he spent in bathrooms at parties
oh, that's
with people
awesome.
showing him stuff. Yes.
So, and nowadays, like people aren't that shy. They'll show you.
Oh, yeah. They'll just go,
You know, before this pandemic, I was at the grocery store with my wife, and you know, just walking down an aisle, and the patient sees me and starts lifting up the shirt, the flank, and says, you know, what do you think of this? And I'm thinking like I'm grocery shopping with my wife, and you know, come to the office. But you know, every once in a while, there's something.
yeah.
We have very good friends who, interestingly, is a urologist, and urologists have the best jokes ever. So you know, there's some derms that we know that are incredibly funny, right?
Yeah.
But urologists are just like most every urologist you can think of is just hysterical. So you know, pecker checkers are really like, they're
Pecker
hysterical.
checkers. I like that.
So we're at our friend's house who's a urologist. It's Easter Sunday several years ago, and there's a guy there who is a super nice guy. He's actually become a friend, and he's in publishing, and he, you know, is an interesting guy and very, you know, the corporate world. And his wife is a high powered professional who just had something I took care of this past week. And he honestly walked over to me, he lifted up his shirt, and it's Easter Sunday. And he's like, Joel, what do you think of this spot? And I said, dude, I don't know what you're doing at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, but I'm going to be at my office waiting for you because I think that's a melanoma. And,
Oh,
and it was. So, you know, every once in a while, those, oh,
yeah.
by the ways, actually can be something
Well,
that's potentially
I
life-saving.
agree. Okay, I ended up going to Harvard, but I was Princeton early action because Princeton was much more beautiful. And so I got into Princeton and then early and then applied to Harvard. But I had to have a local interview. And the problem is I'm young for my grade, and the local interviewer was across the border in New Jersey. And New Jersey, I had to be older to drive by myself. So dad needed to drive me. The man was moving. He was getting married and moving. So the only room that we could be in was his living room, which meant dad had to be there during the interview. So I'm starting the interview with the guy. He's talking to me. You know, I'm 16 years old, and dad, and the phone rings. The guy leaves the room. My dad leans over and goes, Heidi, I have to tell him he has a skin cancer on his forehead. And I'm like, no, it's my Princeton interview. No, don't do it. Don't do it. And of course, I let it, I did. The guy became my dad's patient. I got into Princeton. I didn't go to Princeton anyway, but the funny thing is, fast forward, I'm at Wimbledon with a friend, and we got the debenture tickets so we could go in the back in this upper crusty area, which is funny. The tickets cost, as opposed to the US Open, for Wimbledon, the tickets cost a bloody fortune, but then you get this beautiful club sandwich and a Chablis for nothing. And we're at a table for four, my friend and I, and these two older gentlemen say, "Can we join you?" And I'm sitting trying to look at my friend, and out of my eye, this man is covered with basal cells and squamous cells, his whole face, everything, one of those guys. And I'm thinking, la 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 la, don't look at him, don't look at him, la la la, just keep talking. And finally, I couldn't I couldn't take it anymore. And I just looked and I said, "Sir, I'm so sorry to bother you and interrupt your conversation, but I'm a dermatologist and I just want to make sure that you see a dermatologist for what's on your face." And he goes, "Oh, the skin cancers, whatever." Anyway, they started pouring us their wine. We had very interesting chats. They had all this history of Wimbledon. It was great. So, you know what? We are who we are. We cannot
Honestly,
help it.
it's for obviously most of the skin cancers we see, not all, but most are on the face. And it's really hard to actually have a conversation with somebody when
Oh,
we're
yeah.
focused on something that Monday through Friday, our brain says, that's bad. And then all of a sudden you're looking at somebody and you can't even focus on a conversation. And that's actually happened to me countless times where, you're somewhere. We were in Mexico and my kids were learning how to play blackjack at this little table where there were no stakes other than, some guacamole dish that was there. And it was all fun. This resort was doing a great job. And I literally was looking at the tip of somebody's nose saying, "Oh my God, that's a squamous cell and it's on the alar rim. And as bad as that is, it's going to be really worse to reconstruct that. Does this person know they probably have a pedicle flap in their future?" And I'm like, so
Right,
finally I gently said something at the end, so I didn't disrupt the
right,
blackjack game because there
right,
was nothing we could do. I didn't want to
right,
interrupt it.
right, right. Up, are you there? You just froze. He's freezing. He's frozen, but he's coming back. You're back. Okay,
The person lived in Canada, and I exactly told them who to go see,
that's
and
great.
and it got taken care of.
Well, I don't know about you, but yeah, on skin cancers, this also happens because nowadays that Dwayne Reed and Walgreen, obviously before COVID, had these people in white coats who were supposed to help people choose things. And I'd be going through to pick something up, and I'd hear someone in a little white coat, the salesperson, telling someone something about what they should use for their acne or something. And I'm thinking again, I'm playing the Banana Split song in my head. Do you remember the Hanna-Barbera Banana Splits? La,
Yeah.
la, 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 la. And I'm playing that in my head, so I shouldn't. And then finally, I'm just like, okay, derm intervention. And I lean forward and I go, okay, sorry, I'm a dermatologist. Don't mean to interrupt. Ignore this all. You need Accutane. See a dermatologist. None of this is going to help you. And, or you didn't get used to you didn't get used to your cleanser. You don't get used to your cleanser. Just see someone who knows what they're doing. And then I walk away before they kick me out of Dwayne Reed. But you can't help it. It's like our duty. We live it.
I went to my oldest about 3 years ago when she first started to get a little bit of acne. She wanted to go to Ulta. So we went there, and honestly, it was as if I knew nothing about the
Well, I
topic.
remember that because but I, as not her parent, who's a derm, was able to chat with her.
You did chat with her, and she spent some time with you at New York. And honestly, I remember about last year, my wife and my daughter and my niece had brunch with you at Barney's. And
We had a fun time.
I'm worried about like the future of these places. Barney's is, with
Well,
everything.
yeah,
This
I
is
was there at the end. Well, Barney's already went out of business. Barney's went
right.
out of business before, and I went through there during the last days. Fred's, I assume, is not going to survive. Um, I assume Fred's is not going to survive now. We didn't know at the time. But yeah, it's very, there are a lot of places, but when you think about it, there are these rotations of what happens in the economy. And you know what, right now, my biggest concern is that we all get through it alive. That's my biggest concern. And I know that there were better ways of doing it. The problem is New York was not prepared. And New York has been, and we're very densely populated. So we can all try to do what we can do. And like out here in the suburbs, we're trying to get takeout, where they can just drop it in the trunk of the car. And that's what we're trying to do. So now,
Honestly,
yeah,
for kids, this has been, incredibly difficult to try to explain to my kids that number one, they need to continue doing this,
right.
Zoom school type of activity. And that they're not going to have the typical end of year celebrations that they typically have at school. They can't see their friends in the way that they saw them before, but they can do, as of this week, some activities where, they're probably not touching the same type of thing. And then, the hardest part is my mom and my mother-in-law come over a couple times a week. They sit on the driveway. They're wearing a
Right.
mask and gloves. We supply the chair for them, and we pack a care package for them, but they don't really feel
Yeah.
comfortable eating it right there. And then, and they give these virtual hugs to my kids
Right.
that they're used to spending, 1 or 2 nights at their house. And
Yeah.
it's so tough to watch, especially for these elderly people, and you wonder, like, this is the last few years of, unfortunately, people, who may, be in their 80s or something like that, and they can actually,
Well, we
hug their
look at
grandkids
you.
and
You
spend
have
time.
to be so thankful when you can do something like that, or like our friend Viv, who was able to go like outside. They can park themselves outside her mom and stepdad's balcony. But for me, look, I happened to be here with my dad and his wife before when this started because my apartment construction. But when my apartment construction finally can start again and then get done, I'm not going to move back in because then I'll be cutting myself off from these guys. And I think
Really? I
that
haven't heard you say that yet.
no, no,
Wow.
no. I was thinking, I've thought this through because the problem is my apartment building, I have 400 units in my building. I have to go through an elevator. I live on the 23rd floor. I can't walk up and down the stairs all the time.
Right.
So, and there are guys who take my car. I can't park my own car. So, with all of that, at this point, frankly, who knows when my apartment's going to be done anyway? But it doesn't make sense until we can do that. And now, frankly, it's not like I'm seeing friends in the city. It's not like I'm flying around. I
I,
love living in the city to see friends, to go out, to do the things. I'm not doing those things.
I got to
So,
ask you, does your dad and your stepmom know that you're staying for longer?
oh, they're thrilled. Oh, no, no, no. Are you kidding? No, no, no. They are so happy. And the point is, it's a mutual thing because then this way they like keeping an eye, they like knowing where I am and blah, blah, blah. And also, this way I'm basically the infection control czar. I'm the procurement czar. Now there are more choices here with Instacart and things that they can deliver, but I was going to the grocery store. I'm the one who breaks the tie of can you do it or can't you?
Right.
And for safety. And yeah, and luckily they have a very spacious place, and it's not like anybody's using the guest area downstairs. So it's me now, and until we can do this. So it's yeah, it's it's a safety thing because otherwise, then I would not be able to be right there with them and help them in the way that I am, and they, want to be able to be there with me. So
And
it's one of those things.
so it sounds like this was almost fortuitous that you were going through this renovation, that you could spend the time with your dad and your stepmom there, and be their infectious disease czar.
Yes, and the
For
procurements are, by the way, and I have been told I am a very good Mary Poppins for the senior set because I also make little animal things. I have become the felting queen.
so honestly, we've spent a lot of quality family time
You
during
have
this,
because you
and
also have you have space. So like even Passover, you were able to have tables set up on your driveway, socially distanced, to have the elder statesmen there. That
so
was pretty incredible.
we had my mom, my grandma, and then we had a friend who works for one of the professional sports teams in town who's on their own. And we were all in the driveway, distanced off, and we had relatives on a Zoom call, and we went through, and that actually, worked out. We even dressed my dog Hank up um, there, and it's on Instagram, and it was a fun little outfit. And honestly, it's nice to have the opportunity to just go to a different room or somewhere
Yeah.
else. Like right now, I'm at the desk in my closet because I don't want to wake everybody up. It's 2 hours behind you here, and I tend to talk loud when I'm on a webinar or phone call like this, and the basement's kind of dark, and we so
Well, that's
this
why
type
I'm
of
out
thing.
here. And I was doing this from my dad's study. Then we just rotate who needs what space.
Oh, honestly, I thought that was like a green screen. You're
Oh, no,
actually
no,
on the
no. I am
water.
outside. Here we are, like for
That,
everyone to see. This is this is where I am.
that is beautiful. That's actually spectacular.
So that is Piermont, New York, and the Tappan Zee Bridge. Right across the Tappan Zee Bridge is Westchester, and just 20 miles that away is Manhattan. What's wild is, fun fact, Piermont was actually initially, it's a little historic town. There's all this World War II, sorry, all this Revolutionary War history here. But in addition, there was a paper plant here. And when my dad first started practice, he saw tons of skin cancers as well as contact dermatitis from the methods that were used in the paper factory. Now
Wow.
that's long since gone, and it's just this cute little historic town. Now, even in this little historic town, there are, probably 100 cases of COVID that they know of,
Wow.
and that's just this town. Rockland County is a very small county, but we were cleared for elective and cosmetic because, as you may have heard, New York has actually has these guidelines. They're state mandated criteria that each county has to fulfill to open. And some of it you might think is arbitrary because of county lines. I mean, my county is the smallest county in New York, but it's very heavily concentrated. So Suffolk County, which is where the Hamptons are, and some of Long Island, and Westchester opened like almost a week ago. We opened the middle of this week, or officially we didn't open my practice, but we were allowed. There are 2 counties left, including the one that includes New York City, that are not yet open. So while I may not agree with all of the way they did the guidelines in terms of grouping hospitals with outpatient and ambulatory units, so they all open or they not open for elective and cosmetic, at least there is some consistency. There also wasn't consistency with the stores that were allowed to be open. Big boxes, yes. Little stores, no. One of my nurses brought that up to me in a discussion this weekend, and it hit me. It's true. Like, why is Costco safer than the little guy store on the street? But it's just trying to keep things consistent. So I do have to say that I am happy the state at least is doing that. For you guys, you had to go in to do some bad, skin cancers fairly early on, but now how long have you been seeing patients daily?
So Governor Polis had an executive order through April 26th that unless something satisfied one of 4 criteria, which was essentially all about, is something a cancer? Is it at risk for significant growth, metastasis, or threatening a structure like, the tear duct or a limb? So we actually, when we closed on March 16th, we looked at everything that had been biopsied at that point, and we made a list of anything that was a melanoma we still took care of, like that day or the next day.
Yeah.
And then we knew exactly what were the higher risk squamous cells. So invasive squamous cells in people, especially people that have potentially a suppressed immune system, somebody who was a transplant patient or somebody who had CLL or some other type of cancer. So, and we really stayed in touch with those people. We put a pause button on, and then I was trying to get masks. You were kind enough to send me KN95 masks, and thank you. I appreciate it.
That was from that batch when they first started. I was like, I'm not gonna buy dozens, but I tried 4 places that I ordered like 10 masks from each place, and they all came in about that time. So at least for emergency purposes, I figured, what if we had to go to the hospital or someone needed it? So that worked out great.
So honestly, on April 27th, our first day back, those were the masks that I actually wore, and I sent you a picture.
Yeah.
And again, I thank you for that. So we wore those, and we were able to take care of, for the first few weeks, and sort of clear the docket of some of the more concerning skin cancers that were there, and particularly squamous cell. There was a basosquamous cell, which many people classify as more like a basal cell, but really we know that they behave a little bit more like a squamous cell and they can grow more quickly. And it was on the tear duct, and I took care of that, and I had an oculoplastic surgeon reconstruct that. And there are some tumors that I don't feel that should have waited any longer than they
Right.
did. I don't think that it made a huge difference the few weeks in between, but anything that seemed like it was growing or concerning, we took care of.
Exactly.
And honestly, we found in our practice that telemedicine can work for some things. We were able to make it work for dermatologic conditions that are more common, like acne refills. Surprisingly, we were able to
Matthew
make it.
Abram is saying hello. Hi guys. He's
What's up,
saying hello,
buddy?
Matt Abram. Hey.
Hey,
So
Matt.
so you were able to do that for the telederm. So your associates were your associates doing some telederm?
So they were doing a lot of telederm. I was really, the colleagues I have in my office are most of them are younger, and I think that I wanted to give them the opportunity to see as many patients as they wanted to.
Yeah.
And I held off on taking any paychecks or anything related to that. And I was just by the end starting to do some telemedicine and seeing preoperative consults.
Right.
And that's it. But surprisingly, we were able to make Accutane prescription refills
Yeah.
work. And
well, because they must have adjusted some of the regulations in
so
terms of that. Yeah. Because we don't do that. So that's one of the things that I wasn't dealing with. We dealt with prescriptions, but just, spironolactone, retinoids, that kind of thing.
So it was like March 17th, or it was like a day later, where I actually texted George Haruza and said, hey, we got to find this out through the AAD about the whole Accutane iPledge
That's
system.
a good point.
And if the pregnancy test that somebody does at home where they're signing something and taking a picture will work. So, we've been able to make things like that work, and we are continuing to do some of that. So we're still offering telemedicine. And now that we've been open essentially a month, there are still some people who would prefer to try to do something,
especially
from a
the older
telemedicine.
ones. And I know Arit Markowitz was telling me that, one of the things she was doing, has been doing a lot, is using a lot of Fluoraplex and those kind of things, because they're not seeing anyone now. So if someone has a ton of AKs and maybe a BCC in the midst, Fluoraplex will just clear up everything else. It's not going to hide the skin cancer. And then at least they're doing something or slowing the spread of something.
And you can really do a video call like this and talk to somebody about some of the scabbing or irritation they're having, ways to minimize it. So, the one thing is that, we need a dermatoscope for folks out there. Dermatoscope is a handheld device that
you
allows
need to
us.
speak to Arit Markowitz, because she arranged with some of the companies to get $70 ones for patients that they can use. And I will connect you, I promise. And anyone else who, or just if you go on to Arit Markowitz MD on Instagram, she at the beginning of this, actually before, right at like when it was starting, because Arit is her area is non-invasive diagnosis. And that's what she writes textbooks on, dermoscopy, as well as OCT, etc. So she worked with some of the companies to arrange for models that are, they're not the crazy expensive ones that you guys use, but they are good enough for this. There's something that the patient can attach, download to their phone. And then for some patients, she also arranged to the laboratory for those tape tests.
Right.
Could send the tape to the patient, and her fellows talk them through how to do some of the things. So that, I think, and I've never used a dermatoscope, because when I trained at Harvard back in the day, we used jeweler's loupes. And then in those days, TBF, Thomas B. Fitzpatrick, was just starting to meet with the guys from Germany about dermatoscopes. And by the time things came, my dad and I diagnosed so many freaking melanomas, and my concern as I was leaving that area was that if I switched over, would my specificity and sensitivity go down? And then I stopped doing all of that. And then my dad was, his diagnostic skills were way up there to the, till he retired. But obviously everybody uses them now, and that's how you learn. So, but I think for anybody, that is a great thing to know about, and Arit Markowitz is the one to ask.
So I use my dermatoscope for everything. And when I look at you, I know that you trained as a Mohs surgeon as well as a
Oh
aesthetic
yeah,
dermatologist, and
but Mohs is my
with
background. Yes,
Roy Geronimus, and it's very difficult for
and
people.
Stu Salichet before that. So
And,
I mean, yeah.
and it's very difficult for people to realize that, you know, even when we're seeing cosmetic patients, our skin cancer hat is always on. When you're
Always,
aesthetically
always.
evaluating somebody, you know, I know that you're reverting to your background doing Mohs for all those years.
Well, when
And
I think about it, I mean, sometimes I remember, you know how the people who you remember, there was a guy who came in who wanted me to laser this spot, a brown spot. And I said, we got to biopsy that brown spot. And he had an MM in situ. He didn't want the biopsy. I had to send him letters. I had to send him those letters with, you know, return receipt, you know, the thing, morbidity, mortality. He finally, I think it was his sister, convinced him to come back. And lo and behold, he had a big MM in situ. This was back in the day when I was, you know, doing skin cancer. Nowadays, I wouldn't biopsy it, but I would send him to someone to biopsy it. You don't laser over the damn thing.
Steve Diane and I have talked a lot about this even years ago, 10 years ago, before he wrote his book, Subliminal Difference, where, you know, whatever your background is, that's really like you have a conversation with somebody, whether it's in the office or somewhere else,
Yeah.
and there's things that you do automatically. So for you and I and other folks on here like Matt Avram, you know, we look at somebody, and I think probably the first thing that we do is we look and see, you know, do they have anything concerning on their face? That's probably the first. You know, is there something that looks like a melanoma or a basal cell or squamous cell? And this is in like the first 10 seconds of, like, you know, maybe the first 3 seconds. And then
And
the next thing,
it's not even like we know we're doing it.
and then the next thing we look at them and say, you know, what cosmetically have they had done? And then what cosmetically could they do? And that's like when they're talking and they're saying, hi, Joel, I've done those 3 things already. And
But
then
to my friends and family, I'm not judging you, honestly. Honestly, we are not judging you. We are not judging you. It's
but
like when people talk to a psychiatrist and think, "Oh, are they thinking about everything I'm saying?"
but those are the automatic
Yeah.
things, and
Yeah,
then
they're in our heads.
you can have a real conversation. But, you know, if you're doing that Monday through Friday in the office, you can't on Saturday morning when I drop one of my kids off at soccer practice talk to somebody and just shut off what we've been trained to do.
Well,
So
I'm laughing because on a boat in Brazil, on a friend of a friend's beautiful little yacht in a nice part of Brazil, I was there with another friend who's not derm, and the one of the women was a little older, and my friend said, "Oh my God, look how flat her stomach is. I've got to ask her what exercise she's doing." And I started going, "Don't do it. She had a tummy tuck." You know, like I'm trying like very quiet. She had a tummy tuck because I'm far away, but I know, like, it was a great tummy tuck. I mean, most people couldn't tell, but I knew based on the belly button. Chris Subio talks a lot about the subtleties of the belly button. And his belly button was not so subtle to me, but I was like, don't bring it up. Don't bring it up. We're not going to talk about that because we know too much. We see too much. And it's a little frightening. And to all those women out there who think they're the only ones whose bellies are poofy, the people, your friends whose bellies aren't, most of them had a tummy tuck. If they've had kids, they had a tummy tuck,
so
unless they're genetically bounced back, because
and
some people genetically bounce back, some don't. That's all there is to it.
and for us, some of these things, you know, on the face where you can look for little indications that somebody's had a rhinoplasty or facelift. So I, like you, spent a number of years at Mount Sinai. So I went to medical school at Mount Sinai. So, you know, we used to call something like an across the subway platform diagnosis. If you're literally, you know, if you're
Across the room.
if you're at the 96th Street, you know, subway platform waiting for the 6th train, and you're going downtown and someone's
You're
going
saying these numbers
uptown
like I know. You think I ever take the subway?
to the
I'm a
Bronx,
suburban girl. I didn't train in New York.
and you look across and you're like, that person, you know, you can make a diagnosis of a skin cancer, or you can tell, you know, at this point you can tell, you know, lip augmentation where that rickets line, the profile line, is just something doesn't look right. You know, those are all things that are very interesting, but you can't shut your brain off. As a
No, we don't. We
dermatologist, an
don't.
aesthetic dermatologist, and a skin cancer person, we
Oh,
we
please, you
do these
watch
things.
television now with HDTV. It's hard, you know? Please, I like my little television at home. I have a smaller TV because when I watch Law and Order reruns, I don't want to see Chris Knopf's old acne scars.
So
Mr. Big, I don't want to see your acne scars. I
love
just
Mr.
want to see
Big.
your face.
So
But now, a question for you first. Let me go, before we go on with this, I just want to ask something. you also do clinical trials. And one of the big things that's been going on is, with this COVID thing, how has that affected the clinical trials you guys were doing, or was the timing right that you were ending certain things right before?
So that's such an important question. So, for folks out there, so companies have invested millions and millions of dollars in a new device like a laser, or a new injectable like a filler like Juvederm or Restylane, or another neuromodulator like Botox and Dysport, and some upcoming ones like Revance. And it's honestly it's a very difficult time for them. If it's a company who has a product already, then if they have a product already, then hopefully the company may be okay. But if it's a company who has really put all their venture capital and all their funding into this one product, the product may, at minimum, be significantly delayed, and
Do you
potentially.
think it's going to be delayed because the trials, the data points are lost and they're going to have to adjust?
So
Or do you think they were kept?
I'm concerned about a few of the clinical trials. We had about 13 trials that were actively going on when this all happened. And some of those were in the follow-up stage, where before retreatment, we were just capturing photos. So,
Yeah.
those trials, the photos have been impacted, and the ability to show those follow-up photos. And, over a reasonable period of time, they came out with, this is how patients can take photos at home. You don't want to be under a skylight, or next to a window, or those types of things. These are some tricks to make the photos, but they're still not going to be consistent photos.
Right.
And then for other people, their follow-up interval, which is not just a efficacy check, but it's a safety check
Treatment,
too. Those intervals are lost. But other things, that you're right, the timing of it was actually perfect. So there was an injectable trial where whenever you do clinical trials, sometimes some of the sites are actually monitored by the FDA, and it's not a bad thing. It's just something that we all have to go through, at various points in our career. We literally finished before quarantine, about a week and a half before. You and I, we were at Miami Cosmetic Surgery at the end of February, and the day before, I had finished a FDA monitor who had been
Oh,
in my office
wow.
for a week and a half for a
Yeah.
particular study. And I'm confident that, first of all, we did not have any sanctions, and it went exceedingly well. And I am very grateful to my study team, and the people that do my studies are incredible, and they're very detail oriented. And if you think I'm type A positive and I get my panties ruffled about things, I'm glad that my staff is actually type A positive to the infinite degree. So I take my hats off to them. But fortunately, for some companies like that they're able to go through with their process and things were done. And then there were other things that I'm looking so forward to that were significantly delayed, and that's tough.
Yeah, it is. And actually, the launches, when you think of some of the launches that were delayed, and then, the whole Teoxane line, and then Restylane Kiss is being rolled out gradually. Like, for some people, they have it in their office because they started. Our rep told us he's bringing our experience stuff. I said, don't bring it until we're going to be there, and we don't want him wandering in when there are patients. He can bring it and drop it this week. But it's been a process. And then, frankly, I know, like, for my office, everybody's doing things differently. You hear a lot of people talking about incentivizing patients. That's not my focus. Frankly, my thing is, it's more like, I announced on Instagram when we got the okay that we could keep our reopening date of June 1. And immediately we got a zillion calls. Can you move us up? No, we were already booked from June 1, and we're booked. And I feel very grateful. I feel so grateful to my patients that they are, like, wanting to come in. We do. And for us, the bigger issue is that we have to let people know we can't squeeze anybody in, because we have our wait list thing, because things do change, but we can't squeeze anyone in because we have the protocols about how people can go in and out. So I feel blessed with that. I wonder what it's going overall, whether when our patients come back, they're going to just be like, the longtime patients just, get me back to where I was, or whether some of the what they're going to want may be different. What do you think? I mean, do you think that your patients are still going to be asking for the very same things? Do you think there's going to be any differences based either on finances or on appearance?
So, as I indicated, we really opened up after April 27th. And initially, for all 6 of us dermatologists, it really focused on
The medical.
the skin cancers
Yeah.
and the backlog of things where we really couldn't do something, fully helpful on telemedicine. So
But now you're doing cosmetic.
using a dermatoscope is one of them. So we have
Yeah.
people to look at, and then little by little, about 2 weeks ago, we started to integrate some aesthetic procedures. And, I think that coincides, first of all, in Colorado with the beauty salons and, the haircut places and the nail places and even the tattoo parlors opened up at the exact same time.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
some people said, gosh, I've been to the beauty salon and
Right, they
things
have
were
their list.
okay. And interestingly, they're not allowed to use blow dryers because
Oh, I know.
obviously that aerosolizes. So, people who had a good experience there then said, I've been to I've done my hair, I've done my nails, and I'm kind of waiting for that next step that I like to do. And it's been, they may have been due for their Dysport or their Botox in March, and now it's, May. And we saw a lot of those people. And, for some of those people, you can actually, you can have them come into the office. We are booking a long appointment because they're called in directly from the car. Some people like to we're on the second floor in our main office. So they walk in, they go up the stairs, they come into they just before they come in the office, they're screened to make sure they don't have symptoms. And then they have a touchless thermometer. They use hand sanitizer and they're put immediately into a room. And that's where we start. And then I come in and I'm wearing a mask. My staff is wearing a mask and the patient's wearing a mask. And for many of these people, they want their forehead treated or their crow's feet treated or their 11s in between their eyebrows treated. And, they'll keep their mask on and we'll talk. But honestly, it's almost like a Norman Rockwell of like the old world when your dad and my dad, became, started practicing, because you're in the room and you're talking to them. How have you been? How's your family? They tell you everything, and you're not worried about time. You're in.
Oh,
in
you
the
see,
past.
if anything, it's funny because for me, it's going to be the opposite, because normally we are chatting while we're doing the procedure, while we're doing everything. But since 90% of my patients are going to be taking their mask off when I treat, they're not going to be able to talk. So there won't be talking, and I can't talk. Because if I talk, I'm going to take, my nurses want to make sure that we keep going, because my normal appointment is 40 minutes, every appointment. And so now we're going to, the first 2 weeks, do an hour, but that's to get us used to things. So if anything, we have to move faster than we normally do.
Well, you'll see that there's this point where you're sitting down before the procedure or after the procedure where you're done. And because you've scheduled this for a much longer interval time than typical, there is a lot of time to actually talk to people, and they're going to want to talk to you.
That's nice that you can. Mine isn't going to be that much longer than usual.
So for many people, this is one of the first times they've been out.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, I've had this conversation countless times where somebody says, "Hey, Joel, it's so nice to see you. How's your family?" And I ask how theirs is. And they say, "Well, I went to the hair salon the other day and look, my hair, my roots, I've
They
died.
feel like
I'm
themselves.
feeling better about myself." And that was an experience, and they felt better about going to the hair salon than the grocery store, because at the hair salon, everybody was wearing a mask. They kept the mask on. And the grocery store, many people aren't wearing masks here.
Here it's a law.
So
here it is a law.
It's not a law at the grocery store here. And you look at people and you wonder, what are they doing? And you see people, sometimes somebody coughs. So when they come to the office, they say, hey, I'm really glad you have all these safety measures in place. You've screened me because the grocery store didn't do it. You checked my temperature.
It's interesting because
and
the
you
thing
have
is,
to wear the mask.
I would think that they'd even be more comfortable coming to us than the nail salon or the hair salon, because we know what we're doing, but it is part of the same thing. I mean, here they're rigorous at the grocery store, although the truth is half the people wearing their masks pull them down. They don't realize where it should be. It's like under the nose thing. But what I love is, though, that we are part of making people feel better. And early on, one of my first Instagram lives was with Patricia Ogilvy from Munich, and they never had to stop. but they weren't doing cosmetic. They were doing general derm and everything. And she said, as they started seeing their patients, the patients were so happy to start feeling like themselves again. Look, I gave myself a haircut and I felt more normal. I colored my own hair and I felt more normal. And it is something that makes you feel more like you're doing some self-care. I mean, those first 3 weeks, I was lucky I remembered to brush my teeth because you just sort of don't care. So I love that your patients are feeling that. I think for us, we're going to have those conversations, more FaceTime we're going to do while they're in the parking lot before we bring them in. But again, this is a work in progress. And I think the most important thing is going to be to make sure that they know we care about them, like you're saying, and that all of us as physicians, we care. We want to make sure they're safe, we're safe, and that this place is just going to be, the bee's knees of PPE.
So we do care. And, from the safety aspects of the things that you and I have long discussed, and, I jumped on a text chain that we're on late yesterday, but, you asked for the face shields, and I'd be happy to send them too.
Thanks. Yeah, and I found the face shields again because we started late, but then you have these places that, now we're at this point of going, where the heck are our face shields?
So,
and then you track it down. But that's the joy of having friends around.
I will say that your staff is going to look to you for, what they should do in terms of protection. And, in New York, the temperature fluctuates just as it fluctuates here. And there are days where it's a little bit warmer. And I will say that the face shield is a very difficult thing to wear. First of all, surgical loops don't fit under it very well.
I don't wear surgical loops. So,
and wearing 2 masks is already hot, but when you put
I'm
the face
going to wear
shield
one
over
mask with the face shield. That's the goal.
But certain things like surgery that I'm doing, some of the masks that we wear, like the fabric mask and the copper mask, those types of things, you have to have something over it.
Yes.
Whereas a KN95 or an N95 mask is different, but still, for a surgical type of procedure where there may be some, splatter or something like that, that's a little bit different. But the face shields, honestly, the movie Along Came Polly, where Ben Stiller's sitting at the table and he's out on his first date with Jennifer Aniston, and they're in a restaurant and they're having spicy food, and she has no idea that he is sensitive to spicy food, and he's dripping sweat all over the place, and it's on his shirt. And then finally, it's so obvious that she says, hey, you seem really warm right now. That's how you are when you take off this face shield. You are literally just dripping because it is so warm under that. One mask or 2 masks, when you breathe out, it doesn't go anywhere. It's so hot.
I will tell you, on Friday, I was in the basement of my office. Love that I have my office basement, but I wanted to do a massive reorganization, cleaning to make sure that we can see our PPE, we can keep track, every now and again. It's like a house. You've got to go down. I had a KN95 and then a cup mask over it, because then if I needed to move it or I touched the outer one,
right.
I drenched through both. My glasses were fogged up. I was dripping because I was running up and down from the basement and moving things around. So and I already, I think the key for us, and I think for all of us, is OSHA is what we're doing. We actually have an OSHA meeting planned for our office on Thursday, that's when we're going to go over everything with the staff and make sure that they're comfortable. We're nearing the end, and I love, by the way, I love that Steve Diane said, what did he say? This is going to be a cross between Seinfeld and Woody Allen.
Larry David.
Yeah, it's Larry David. So, but anyway, I was going to say, I know this is a little touchy-feely for you, but as you'll see, my t-shirt, I love this t-shirt, says gratitude. So I love ending all of these with my gratitude list. So these are your questions. Number
Heidi,
one question is...
I'm not going to stand up because I'm actually in my underpants. I'm in my boxers, but
I
did put a nice shirt on for you.
Yes, and I appreciate that. I just assumed that you were in, something I didn't want to see. But then again, you don't know what I'm wearing on the bottom of this either. So, but I'm outside, so I do have to have a modicum of modesty. So first, something for which you are grateful.
Honestly, I am grateful to my wife for being the rock in our family, for being the person who always is optimistic and
Goldie, we love you.
she is pathologically happy, so, and that certainly doesn't come from being married to me for almost 20 years. It comes from who she is and really the environment that she's created in our house and instilled that positive way of looking at things into
She's
everybody
the little engine that could.
that
So
that
now,
that she touches. And my wife is on the board of directors for many different companies, and everybody says she brings sunshine and a fresh perspective to everything, and she has helped me inculcate some of this positive thinking into my life. So I'm grateful for my
thank you,
wife.
Goldie, for making him tolerable. But okay, so that answers someone. So now something that you're
So,
grateful for.
I'm honestly, through all of this, we all have our ways of coping with things and de-stressing. And, very early on, I realized that while we can't go to the gym and Orange Theory and these other places right now, fortunately, my wife had the foresight, somehow, some way in September to order me a Peloton. For years, I wake up in the morning
Oh,
for years I wake up in the morning and I do the elliptical, and it's great. However, it's the same routine all the time. So now I'm really alternating days between the Peloton and the elliptical. And it sounds so trivial for,
no, but
for
it's
somebody to
huge. I
say,
understand.
they're grateful for something like this when we're all grateful for our health. I look at,
Oh no, I get that. We get that. But this is it. This is what I mean. Having that, is tremendous because it's given you something you can do. You're keeping your heart health, you're keeping your lung health, and it's a de-stressor.
so, and that's it. So, first of all, I've lost 11 pounds that I needed to lose. And my primary care physician,
Wow.
she has always been tough on me. And my wife and her have gone in cahoots. And many years ago, they got me, the whole series of 24. And that really was what got me up in the morning to do the elliptical. And, I think when you buy good stuff, like, 3 houses ago, we bought this Precor elliptical. It has never been serviced that I know of. It's managed to go through 3 different moves and be set up, and there's a TV in front of it. And I like to wake up. I like to watch an episode of whatever it is, Jack Ryan or
Yeah.
Homeland or Fauda, and it feels better. For some people, they can't wait to wake up and have a cup of coffee, and for
Yeah.
me, I can't wait to wake up and not only have a cup of coffee, but also do
But that's
something that just the peace and quiet. Because as soon as you get to the office or as soon as you start your telemedicine, you are looking at people's ceilings and you're seasick and looking at their floors, and something may need charging. Like initially, I had here where I put my phone on my charger and maybe the dog brushed past the charger, but it wasn't on the right spot.
yeah.
So I think that there's a sense of like equilibrium, and I wake
That's
up
good.
and my equilibrium is helped to establish from a
That's great.
workout.
And now for you, now something about finally in our last minute, because it's giving me the countdown, something about yourself for which you are grateful.
So I think I'm grateful that I learned adaptability at an early age. And my parents instilled some of that into me, and things don't always flow the way you want them to. And rather than look in the rearview mirror and be upset about it, I just try to look through the windshield and say, what can I do to just make this better? And I think in terms of our outlook on things, that adaptability is important. Living in
Yeah.
New York for 4 years of medical school, I was used to doing my laundry in a laundry machine, and then all of a sudden you got to go to the Mount Sinai dorm and Aaron Hall and put your quarters in, and then and be down there exactly an hour later, or someone's going to take your stuff and throw it on the floor or put it
I
in a
would say that
basket.
medical training definitely teaches you adaptability. There is no question. I wasn't there, but I can tell you, I didn't live in dorms during my med school at Penn, but having found nooks and crannies at Hospital University of Pennsylvania to sleep in and things to cover myself with. Yeah. Yeah. It's a
So
key thing. I like that. Adaptability is a
I
good
think
thing.
I think we've all learned new things about ourselves. We've all learned new things about our family, and we've learned things about our neighbors or our friends and
Yeah.
how we can help out during
And be there
a
for
very
each
difficult
other.
time. And I
And
will.
we are counting down. So the last 20 seconds, go.
So, I think that, the patients historically, sometimes people come in and their day is,
12,
they're affected, they're on
11.
edge. And here, I'll do it in 10 seconds. So I will say
It's going to
that,
cut me off, not me.
I will say that there are people come in and they're nice.
They're nice. And
I'm live.